Ceres wakes up saying, "It was a dream. Why did I suddenly start dreaming about the past? I think it has been around 10 years. Recalling the past, I said to myself, at the time, a hero party composed of 5 friends was formed, Light of Hope. I, a mage fighter, am a member of the said party, embarking on a quest to defeat the Demon King. Supporting each other's backs, it's been smooth sailing this far, although we haven't been able to return to the village as of late." As Ceres got up, he says, "I hope Shizuko and the rest are doing well." As Ceres was coming down the flight of stairs, he says, "Whoops, I better hurry up, or else someone will start yelling at me." Ceres has a flashback, recalling the day he came down, and Zect was waiting. Upon seeing Ceres, Zect says, "Ceres, sorry, but you're out of the party." Ceres was not surprised, as he says, "So I am." Then he thinks, "I figured this was bound to happen." This party has one problem. Zect, the hero, is an amazing guy. He's got the leadership skills, the talent to do anything he wants, and a handsome face to top it all off. But he has one small defect that makes him a piece of trash, and it's that he is a massive womanizer. Zect tends to put love first, far more than he cares about our friendship. Zect says, "You know well that you can't come with us, Ceres. If you want to make it big as a hero, I need equally as big achievements. Unfortunately, you're a burden that doesn't let me reach such heights. But hey, you know that while you may be out of the party, we're still friends, right?" Mel says, "I agree with Zect's opinion." As Ceres says, "Me," Mel says, "You can't keep up with the party anymore. In the near future, you're bound to get seriously injured or even die." Ceres is shocked as he thinks, "Mel, you're not going to have my back in this?" Just then, he sees she's wearing Zect's locket and thinks, "That's probably why Zect had her come along. Even though I was always at your side, you still chose Zect over me." As Zect holds Mel, he says, "Go back to the village. You can be a countryside adventurer over there, you know? You can even look for a weaker party to join in." Ceres thinks, "Good grief, can't you do something about your attitude of trying to be superior to others?" Then he says, "I guess so." Then Ceres thinks, he must have misunderstood that Mel and I were dating, so he tried to cuck me. She didn't have any special feelings for me, so I suppose I'm fine with this. I don't really have a choice. I'll end up causing a fuss if I stay. I'm just in their way. These guys are amazing, but joining other S-rank parties is still on the table. Even if I end up dropping to A rank, I'll probably still have plenty of parties to join. However, I really meant it when I called you a close friend. I would have preferred if you had been more honest with me." Then Mel says, "This is goodbye, Ceres." Ceres says, "Thanks for everything thus far. I hope everything goes well for you four." Zect says, "So you're leaving the party?" Ceres says, "Yup. See you around." Back to the present day, Ceres was walking down the street and was speaking in his mind. "Those guys were important to me, but not in the sense of love. Simply put, it's what a father feels for his kids. Actually, I do have a secret I've never told anyone, not even them, and it's that I am a transmigrator. I was a 42-year-old father in my previous life. I worked at a trading company, was a high-ranking worker, a loving father and husband. Well, it's because of that reason that everyone my age just seems like children to me. Yes, I'll admit it. In this world, I am basically a geronophile. People of this world only live up to the age of 50, and they've got these customs like they did in old Japan. Women are considered old by the time they turn 17. After their mid-20s, they are no longer treated as women. So, I see the people of this world as nothing more than pedophiles. From my point of view, this is such a waste. Having died at the age of 42 and being 14 years old in this world, for me, you've got to be past your mid-20s. Otherwise, I wouldn't see you in a romantic light. Well then, might as well stop by this place before heading home. Since I've been in the heroes party up until this point, I never had the chance to come to these places." As Ceres enters, the guide Komori says, "Welcome. Are you perhaps Lord Ceres?" As Ceres says, "Yes." Komori says, "Are you not part of the heroes party? Why would you come to such a place?" Ceres says, "Got kicked out. I'm just Ceres the adventurer now. Do pardon my question. Would you mind if I take a look at your female slaves for a bit?" Komori says, "By all means. Take your pick. We've got everything from elves to former nobles. Actually, I want to see your female slaves of lesser value, starting with household slaves." Komori says, surprised, "Household slaves? Oh, pardon me. Certainly, now that you're alone, housework is a concern to you. Beyond these curtains, we have our housekeeping and other slaves of no value." As Ceres passes by their cages, he thinks, "How terrible. They're treated like wild beasts. They aren't even given beds." Just then, he comes across one cage and gets shocked as he sees the person and says, "No way. Shizuko?" As Shizuko sees him, she says, "Ceres." Ceres thinks, "Why is she in a place like this? This woman is my first love, and also Zect's mother, Shizuko." As Ceres buys Shizuko, Komori says, the total would be 5 silver coins, and 3 additional coins for the slave mark. Ceres says, "Silver coins? Why is she that cheap?" Komori says, "She is an elderly woman with multiple children. Such is a reasonable amount, Lord Ceres." Ceres thinks, Shizuko is in her 30s. In this world, she's basically a grandma. Then he says to Komori, I'll pay for everything with a gold coin, but prepare some clothes and a shower for her. Komori says, we only have garments for young women. Is that okay? Ceres says, it'll do for now. Then Komori marks her, saying, with this, the contract is complete. As Shizuko changes, she tries to hide herself as she says, please don't stare so intensely. Ceres says, oh, sorry, Shizuko. Let's buy you some new clothes after we get out of here. Shizuko says, trembling, good idea. I apologize for making you buy a grandma like me, but these clothes are a bit… Just then, Komori says, Lord Ceres, here are the documents. If you perchance lose these, the slave mark is still engraved on her. As long as they know who their owner is, everything will be fine. From here on out, this woman is yours. We appreciate you business. As Ceres buys Shizuko some new clothes, she asks, how does it look? Ceres says, it looks great. Then, as Ceres buys some food, he says, have a bite, Shizuko. But seeing her bow in front of him, he gets shocked and says, what are you doing? Shizuko says, thank you very much for buying such a worn-out slave. I promise to devote my everything to you from now on. Ceres says, Shizuko, you don't need to do all that. Shizuko says, I'm your slave. It's only natural that I do this. Ceres says, I'll wait until you calm down. Once you do, could you please tell me what happened? Shizuko says, okay. Ceres has a flashback as he thinks, when Mel cried, it felt just like I was caring for a child. It doesn't feel that way with Shizuko. She looks like an adult Japanese beauty. So, for a Japanese myself, she suits my fancy quite a lot. Then Shizuko says, I got sold by my husband. Ceres says, old man Zector sold you? Then he thinks, when Zect got recognized as a hero, he got a huge lump sum of money from the state. So, if you think about it, Shizuko being a slave makes no sense. Shizuko says, that's right. Ceres recalls thinking, once they got the money, Zector, Shizuko's husband, got obsessed with women, gambling, and alcohol, and the money quickly began to disappear from his pockets. Shizuko says, I didn't criticize him for spending money on women in the nightlife industry. But since he was spending so much money, we had a talk, and Shizuko recalls when Zector said, sorry for everything. Let's have some fun in the city one last time, then I'll stop spending. Then she says, and so I went to the city excitedly with him, but it was a trap. He sold me right away to the slave traders. Ceres says, what a horrible story. But if things turned out like this, why didn't you write a letter to Zect? Shizuko says, no can do. That boy loves his father but hates my face. Recalling Zect's behavior, Ceres thinks, come to think of it, he always hated how serious Shizuko was. Ceres says to Shizuko, and here I thought old man Zector was a serious person as well. Money really changes people. But without money, that guy? Ceres recalled the time he said to Zector, I want to marry Auntie Shizuko. Zector told him, do you know? Ceres, by the time you turn 15, she'll be an old hag. If you still want her, a gold coin and she's yours. Ceres thinks, that's what he told me when I was a kid. He had a point. Women over 20 in this world are worthless. But many couples stay together because of the time they spent together. Ceres says to Shizuko, but aren't you mad at old man Zector? Shizuko says, blindly so, but I can't do anything at this point. Besides, that man is going to burn in hell anyways. Ceres says, sorry for making you remember all those painful memories. Shizuko says, it's fine. When you bought this old lady, it made me really happy. Ceres recalls thinking, Shizuko always keeps smiling. Back when I was a kid and my parents died, she was the one who encouraged me, always kind to me. She was the best woman for the role of a mother. Then Shizuko says, then I'll do anything for you. Should I cook something delicious for you? Ceres thinks, I bet Shizuko still sees me as nothing more than a kid. Well, it is what it is. Shizuko again says, I'm your slave now, aren't I? Is there something you want me to do? Ceres says, if it's up to me, I'd be happy if you were to be my lover. Shizuko says, stop that. Messing around with love is not funny. Who would want a grandma that is nearly twice their age? Ceres says, I'm serious. Did I not confess to you back when I was a kid? Recalling. Shizuko thinks, right, when did he get taller than me? Then she says to Ceres, but you're so handsome, Ceres. Surely all the cute girls are all over you, right? Like, let's see, your childhood friends, for example. Ceres says, Zect's already been with all of them. As Shizuko says, what poor taste they have. You're far better than Zect is. Ceres thinks, Zect, your mom is criticizing you. Then Shizuko says, if you insist, then I accept. Until you have a girl that you like, then I'll be your lover. As Ceres says, all right, thanks. Shizuko says, I should be the one to thank you. As Ceres and Shizuko spent their bridal night the next morning, Ceres took Shizuko out and brought her in for registration. The counter girl, Sally, said, if it isn't Lord Ceres, how may I be of service today? Ceres says, I need an adventurer registration and an application for a party. Sally asks, would this party be with that woman over there? As Ceres says, yes. Sally says, with all due respect, should an old hag like you even be doing this at your age? And with Lord Ceres, no less. Shizuko tries to smile as she says, old hag, I guess I am a grandma already. Yes, old hag fits the bill. Fair enough, if I'm going to team up with him, there's no need to register. I want to apply for a reinstatement of my status, please. As Ceres says, whoa, hold up, you were an adventurer. Shizuko says, yes, although neither my ex-husband nor Zect knew about it. I quit before I got married. Since those two were so prideful, I kept quiet about it. Sally says, we'll be checking the blood registry just in case. Do you mind if we draw some blood from you? Just then, a man named Beldar comes, holding Sally, and says, I'm truly sorry for how Sally acted. Are you by chance returning to work? Shizuko says, you could say so. I found myself blessed with a good marriage despite my age, so I'm thinking of returning. Do you think I shouldn't, Barry? Beldar says, blushing. Please stop with the Barry thing, Shizuko. I've become the guild master, I'll have you know. Shizuko says, that's true. Sorry about that, Beldar. So, is it fine to reinstate my status? Beldar says, of course. I'm not going to oppose having the black-haired healer make her return. Ceres asks, confused, what's this black-haired thing? Beldar says, Shizuko was quite the huge deal back in my times. The master healer who was leaps and bounds above the rest. As Shizuko says, I'm a former S-rank adventurer. Ceres says, shocked, in his mind. Family-oriented and open-minded, I get, but strong on top of that too? Wait, if she was this strong, how did she get enslaved so easily? Beldar says, since you were out of the field for quite a while, I can't give you back your S rank. So, how about you start from A rank instead? Shizuko says, sure, I don't mind. Beldar says, well then, I've got some things to do, so if you'll excuse me. Sally, take care of the rest. Sally bows, saying, I'm really sorry about before. Shizuko says, as long as you are, I don't mind. Sally says, well, allow me to show you the available quests we've got right now. Seeing Ceres' expression, she says, is something the matter, Lord Ceres? As Ceres says, sorry, everything was all so surprising that I was in shock. As they accept their first quest, along the way back home, Ceres says, I was quite surprised to hear you were an amazing adventurer. Shizuko says, it wasn't just me, actually. I partied up with Lita's, Mel's, and Maria's mothers. They were all good people to me. We were all very skilled adventurers, but as a party comprised of only women, strange men often approached us, and we'd beat them at their own game, one by one. How nostalgic. Then, once you all got past a certain age, no one dared approach us anymore. Ceres says, and after that you became an ordinary village girl and got married. Then why did you let him turn you into a slave? Why not struggle? Shizuko says, I let my guard down. I didn't expect him to inject me from behind. Then, as they had their lunch, they went to slay the dragon. Then they went back and redeemed the reward. As Shizuko was in the room alone, she says to herself, Ceres, until I can actually say, I love you, I'll play the part of your lover. That's the plan, however. No, this old lady can't get her hopes up for more than this. Surely Ceres was just lonely, that's all. Meanwhile, as Ceres comes back, he says, I'm back. As Shizuko says, welcome back. You're back quite early. Ceres says, that's because I wanted to see you sooner, Shizuko. I had to finish up my work in order to do so first. Then Ceres says, Shizuko, and gives her the flowers he bought for her. Shizuko gets happy and says, you did this just for me? Thank you. Then after eating, they go out for a walk and Shizuko says, Ceres, thank you for today. No one has ever done things like this for me before. Then Ceres gives her the gift he bought for her, saying, go ahead and open it. As Shizuko opens the box, she sees it's a beautiful necklace. She thinks, he's giving me such a lavish necklace like this. I didn't even have a ring from my previous marriage. I can't accept this. Then Shizuko says to Ceres, this is a necklace you give to young women. You know that, don't you? Ceres says, of course. Shizuko thinks, if I accept this gift, I'm sure Ceres will regret ever having given it to me in the future. Ceres says to her, I love you with all my heart, Shizuko. Shizuko says, you shouldn't. I'm no good. Ceres doesn't care and says, I want to be the one closest to you when you are smiling. From now on and forever. Shizuko asks concerned, are you sure about that? You really won't regret this? As Ceres hugs Shizuko, he says, as if I ever could regret this. I've loved you from the very first moment I laid eyes on you. Shizuko smiles and says, all right, I'll give you a chance. Then, as she wears the necklace, she says, smiling, so, does it look good on me? Ceres smiles and says, yes, it suits you wonderfully and complements your beauty. As Shizuko was in the bath, she began to have doubts as she thinks, Ceres lost his own mother at a very young age and was lonely because of that. That's what I had thought. I believe he had said similar things to the other moms as well. Therefore, I only thought of him as a precious child and didn't consider his feelings were real. She smiles as she says, I see. You were serious back then. As Ceres comes back from taking a bath, Shizuko says, Ceres, I haven't done this in a while, so would you mind being gentle with me? Then she thinks, It's probably his first time. So she says to Ceres, "Do you know how to?" But Ceres takes her in his embrace, and the night passed away in passion. In the morning, Shizuko asks, "Did I pass out and fall asleep?" As Ceres asks, "How was it, Ceres?" Ceres says, "You were just so cute that I couldn't help but watch your sleeping face, Shizuko." Then Ceres asks, "So, what shall we do next?" Shizuko says, "Whatever you want to do, you know that you can count on my support and help." Ceres says, "Whatever I want to do, huh?" Then he thinks, she's an S-rank adventurer. There are less than 30 people in the world who have that rank. If I could stay with Shizuko as my wife and live a quiet life, that would be fine by me. But wanting to do that would get me in trouble with Zect and the others because of his father. Ceres says, "If you're not sure on what to do, I was thinking of going back to Jamuna village and live there quietly." Shizuko says, "I see. Let's return to our hometown then. I also want to meet with Haruka, Sayo, and Misaki too." Ceres smiles and says, "Same here." Meanwhile, Zect was with the others as he says, "Huh? We're out of money. How so?" Lita says, "Don't ask me." Maria says, "You don't think Ceres ran away with it, right?" Mel says, "Maria, Ceres wouldn't do something like that." Maria says, "I'm just kidding." As Zek says, "It is what it is. Let's go to the guild." As they arrive at the guild countergirl Asado says, "You haven't received the money from the church?" Zek says, "That's right, I see. We'll go talk it out with the church then." Father Mitsui says, "Excuse me, Lord Zekt, you have not submitted your paperwork." Zek says, confused, "Paperwork? What are you talking about?" Father Mitsui says, "You didn't know this, hero? It's a report detailing your expenses and achievements." Zek says, "I don't remember ever filling out any of that." Then he asks the girls, "What about you?" Father Mitsui says, "The documents we received in the past did have your signature, although the name of the one filling it out was Lord Ceres." As Zek says, "Ceres?" He recalled when Ceres came to him saying, "I have these documents to the church, can you sign them?" Then he says, "Ah, that's what it was for." Zekt asks, "Are the documents that important?" Father Mitsui says, "If you don't have them, I can give you an alternative." As Zek takes the money, he says, "It's a lot less than before." Father Mitsui says, "That's the monthly minimum for expenses. Without the paperwork, that's all I can give you." As they come back home, Zek says, "Mel, you do the paperwork from now on." Mel says, "Why me?" Zek says, "Because you're the sage. You're the smartest among us." Mel says, "It's obvious, right? I guess." As she sees the stack. And Zekt says, "Then, here you go." Seeing Mel is worried, Lyda says, "Come on, it can't be that difficult." Mel yells, "Of course it's difficult. If I'm going to do this, then take me off of any other chores." Zek says, "Ceres could do the paperwork and the chores, though." Mel says, "Then let Lyda deal with this. Or even Maria." Zek says, trying to calm her, "All right, Mel, just focus on the paperwork." Later in the day, as they were going to eat, Zekt says, "Lyda, couldn't you make better food? This one tastes like shit." Lyda says, "If you don't like my food, let Maria do it. Better yet, do it yourself." Lyda says, "Lyda cooks better than me." Zekt says, "Yeah, everything you cook turns into charcoal." Just then, Maria says, "I want to eat Ceres' omuris." While Mel says, "I'd like to taste his hamburgers." While Lyda says, "I'm dying for some Napolitana pasta with lots of ketchup." As they come out from eating, Zekt asks Lyda, "Maria's and Mel's hair are a mess, but why is yours fine, Lyda?" Lyda says, "That's because I just tie it back. Ceres used to handle those two's hair. Since they can't do it on their own, of course it's a mess now." Zekt gets angry as he says, "Ceres again. At any rate, we can't keep going like this. Let's go to the church and have them take care of us." Maria says, "Absolutely not. The church lives a very frugal life. They rarely ever eat meat. We'd have to basically take care of ourselves. We're better off as it is." Zek says, "All right, calm down. We won't go to the church." Mel says, "If we need money, why not go to the guild and earn it?" Zek says, "We can't. The country and the church give us money, so we're not supposed to go out and hunt monsters." Then he thinks, formalities, chores, and odd jobs. Why can Ceres do everything we can't? Damn it, why did things end like this? As Ceres was taking care of Shizuko, she thinks, there must not be a single husband in the world that would do that for his wife. Even then, my idiot son and his partners went ahead and threw him out. I don't like to speak ill of other people's kids, but they didn't even have the decency of saying things. We take turns making meals, but Zekt and Zekter, even if I was ill in bed with fever, would come in saying, "What about dinner?" On the other hand, Ceres says, "I want to see your happy face, so let me cook for you. We have fun every day. He treats me nicely. He pleases me at night. If Zekt and Ceres were in peril and I could save one of them, I would save Ceres without thinking it twice, because I'm his woman." The next day, as Ceres slayed another monster, Shizuko says, "You're really strong, Ceres." Ceres says, "I had to make money on my own, so I'm used to hunting." Shizuko says, confused, "Huh? Didn't you belong to the hero's party?" Ceres says, "Since I'm a magic warrior, I don't get aid. I had to pay my own expenses." Shizuko says, shocked, "Then while you were helping Zekt and the rest defeat the Demon King, you were doing requests on the side to pay for your own stuff. Did I get that right?" Ceres says, "Well, I didn't have a choice. Then, as they go to the guild to get the reward, Asato says, here's your reward. Huh? Lord Ceres, please wait a moment. Sorry, Lord Ceres, you seem to still be registered as a member of the hero party. Ceres says, but I left the group and formed a new one with Shizuko here, right? Asato says, that was a mistake of mine. I didn't make a new registry. I simply made a separate force for the heroes party, Light of Hope. That said, we treat each group independently. It won't affect you at all. Ceres says, what will happen with Shizuko? I didn't tell Zect about her. Asato says, since the leader of the separate force is you, that won't be an issue. The official titles would be Ceres, leader of the separate force, Shizuko, member of the separate force. That's about it. Ceres says, then can we keep using the hero party's privileges? Asato says, yes, your privileges are up as long as you're a member. Shizuko asks, in that case, would I also belong to the heroes party? Asato says, to be precise, you belong to the separate force. At best, you can say that you're Lord Ceres' subordinate, regardless of your relationship or lack thereof with the main group. And also, you've been granted the title of Dragon Slayer. Feel free to call yourself that from now on. Shizuko asks Asato, congratulations, Ceres. If I may ask, has any of the other members hunted a dragon? Asato says, Lord Zect and Lady Lida have hunted demi-dragons, wyverns, but as they are demis, they don't get the Dragon Slayer title. In the last years, only Lord Ceres has been able to. Shizuko says, my, so Zect has only dealt with wyverns. That makes me a little excited. Asato says, Lady Shizuko, this is the greatest hero you're talking about. Please don't address him so casually. Ceres says, I forgot to tell you. Shizuko is Zect's mom. Asato bows, saying, I had no clue you were his mother. Please excuse me. Shizuko says, I don't mind. Besides, I'm just Ceres' lover now. Asato says, his what now? According to the registry, you're just meant to be Lord Ceres' slave. Shizuko says, that's right, his love slave. Asato says, Lord Ceres, could you explain what's going on? Asato says, getting angry, that fool Zector. He's the enemy of all women. What he did is unforgivable. Then Asato says, I've got a proposition for the lovebirds. Would you like a guild marriage? Shizuko says, I couldn't for someone my age. That's too embarrassing. Ceres asks, what's a guild marriage? Sally says, you make a marriage registry through the guild. It would be convenient to contact you in case there are some issues and to keep track of your accounts. Ceres says in his mind, in other worlds, it's like the family registry of my world. It would be a nice way of making it official. Then Ceres asks Shizuko, if you don't mind, I'd like to do the guild marriage. What do you think? Shizuko says, confused, are you sure? I've got several years on you, and this is official. Ceres smiles, saying, I won't regret it. Besides, I fell for you first. As everyone at the guild gives them their well wishes, Shizuko thinks, right now, I couldn't be happier. That's why when I return to the village, I'll keep the promise I made with everyone. All for one and one for all. We swore to share our sorrows and blisses. I'm sure that Ceres won't have any trouble with 4 wives. As they arrive, Ceres says, Shizuko, we've made it to Jimuna village. Then he thinks, ever since my parents of this world died, it was the people of this village who raised me. It's my hometown. As Ceres looks at Shizuko, he sees she looks sad and thinks, well, her reaction is not a surprise. This is where Zector is, the same person that sold her off. Ceres says, long time no see, Chief. The chief says, confused, Ceres, were you not out on a journey with the heroes? As Shizuko comes over, saying, it's been a while, Chief. The chief says, shocked, Shizuko? You're still alive. Zector had told us that you were dead. Ceres says to Shizuko, do you want me to take care of speaking with him? Shizuko says, it's fine. I'll talk to him. As Shizuko explains, the chief says, I see. It must have been quite a traumatic experience. That low-life scum of a criminal. Had he still been here, I would have chopped off his dominant arm and banished him from the village. Shizuko says, wait, is he not here? The chief says, that bumbling fool didn't pay his taxes, so the feudal lord took him away. Then he says, although, Shizuko, you seem plenty happy now. Look at the young hubby you've got yourself. Shizuko says, blushing, yeah, it's almost frightening how happy I've become. The chief says, you too, Ceres, you're amazing. What you said back as a child ended up not being a mere child's prank. Frankly, I never expected you to actually marry her. Quite the brave man you are. The next day, Ceres says, why don't we go to Kazuma? There shouldn't be a problem if we visit at this time. Shizuko says, good idea. Let's head on over there. Ceres says, we can even meet Haruka there too. Recalling, Ceres thinks, Kazuma is the only set meal restaurant in the village. It's named after the owner. Kazuma is Lita's dad and he runs the restaurant with his wife, Haruka. He even helped me recreate some dishes from my previous world. Even though we're not blood related, I consider Kazuma my brother and Haruka my sister. As they enter, Shizuko says, Haruka, we're back. As Ceres says, we're back, sis. Haruka sees them and says, oh my, it's Shizuko and Ceres. The chief already told me. You must have had quite a hard time, Shizuko. Shizuko says. A bit. But Ceres rescued me, so it was no big deal. Haruka says, oh, did he? As Haruka was playfully hitting Ceres, Shizuko says, my, you truly do look like siblings. I'm kind of jealous, even though he's already my husband. Haruka says, speaking of which, you really ended up marrying Ceres. Shizuko says, yup, I resolved myself. As Shizuko says, Haruka, you know that Ceres is also in… Just then, Kazuma says, Haruka, the pasta is ready. Seeing them, he says, it's Ceres and Shizuko. So you came back. Shizuko says, long time no see, Kazuma. Ceres says, I'm back, bro. Ceres recalls, thinking, but man, my bro sure is cool. After my parents died, he told me to see him as his elder brother and father. That's why I also started calling Haruka, his girlfriend at the time, sister. There was a time when I was in love with her, but I already buried those feelings deep within my heart. I don't want us to lose our bond as siblings. Besides, those two are a match made in heaven anyways. Just then, Shizuko asks, you like Haruka, don't you? Ceres says, if we're talking about her as a sister, then yes. Shizuko says, you don't like her as a sister, but rather romantically. Or am I wrong? Ceres says, when I was a kid, you were my first love, while sis, she was the second girl I fell for. Shizuko says, Ceres, that may have been the case at the time. Things have probably changed since then. If you still like Haruka, then don't give up hope just yet. Shizuko says, I think there's this huge problem of intruding in their marriage. In fact, I think there's a chance for all of this to end amicably. You just need to give Haruka a night visit. Ceres says, by night visit, you don't mean me going to… Shizuko says, night visits are a long-standing tradition in this village. It's not the type of act that you think it is. It's not forbidden so long as you follow the rules. Am I clear with that? You must definitely follow the rules. Shizuko says, the night visit rules are, the woman must be over 24 or widowed. You must sit on your knees on her right side until she wakes up. You must not speak to her until she speaks to you, so as to not startle her. Do not shame a woman that has accepted you. If she rejects you, just give up. You must follow these rules. Later that night, Ceres does as Shizuko told him. As Haruka wakes up on seeing Ceres, she says, Ceres, what are you? Ceres, you're sitting at my right side. Are you aware of what that means? Ceres says, sis, this is just, you know. Haruka says, Ceres, you dummy, and slaps him. As Ceres says, big sis, hold on a moment. Haruka says, are you trying to make fun of me? These types of jokes are inexcusable. Ceres says, wait, calm down first. As Haruka says, I am calm. Now explain why you're doing this. Ceres says, sis, it's because I like you. As Haruka again hits him, she says, you mean as siblings, right? Quit it with the tasteless jokes, will you? Then Haruka says in a sad tone, even I get hurt by those. As Ceres says, sorry. The truth is that, Kazuma calls out saying, Haruka, what's the ruckus? As he opens the door, seeing Ceres, he says, Ceres? Then, as Ceres is seated in front of them, Ceres says, big bro, Kazuma, big sis. Kazuma says, let me warn you first. Depending on your answer, we'll stop being siblings. Haruka also says, that's right. Just what in the world were you thinking? Ceres says, I like big sis, but I had given up on that because she had you. Haruka gets angry and says, Ceres, how could you? As Kazuma says, stay quiet for a bit, please, Haruka. This is an important conversation among men. You couldn't give up on the woman you liked, right? Isn't that how you felt about Haruka? As Ceres says, big bro, but it's impossible. Kazuma says, Ceres, just be frank with me. I want to hear your honest feelings. Ceres says, big sis seemed to be happy at your side, so that's why I gave up on her. Whenever I looked at you two, you were all smiles. I was jealous of what a perfect match you two were. Kazuma says, I see. But Ceres, while Haruka looks undeniably young, she's still Lita's mom. She's the same age as your late mother, Maruna. Despite that, do you still love Haruka? As Haruka says, hold on, just what are you talking about now? Ceres says, age has nothing to do with love and I don't want to give up on her. If Big Sis accepts me, then I'll offer my love to her. But I don't want to make you sad either. Kazuma says, yelling, I just want to hear how you feel about Haruka right now. Ceres says, I love her. Kazuma says, Haruka will keep piling on years from now. She still looks young right now, but she'll be a grandma in no time. Can you still say the same about a much older Haruka? Can you cherish her for the rest of your life? Ceres says, I can. Kazuma calms down, saying, I see. What do you think, Haruka? Then he says to Ceres, when you turn 30, Ceres, you'll be the same age as me while Haruka will be in her mid-40s. She'll be an old hag by then. Despite that, you say that you want to stay by her side and continue to love her? Ceres says, despite all that, I will still love her. Kazuma gets up, takes hold of Haruka's hand and says, then Ceres, if your love is real as you say, then I want you to show me, right in front of me. As Haruka and Ceres made out, Kazuma asks, you're finished already? As Haruka says, yeah, Kazuma says, I see. Then he thinks, I guess he left halfway through. Kazuma says, Ceres, to be honest, as man and woman, we haven't had that connection for a while now. We still maintain a good relationship, though. Haruka says, after Lyda was born, we kind of stopped feeling like husband and wife. I've been thinking of doing something like this for a while now, but it's over for a woman when she reaches a certain age. Kazuma says, I'm entrusting you with Haruka. Ceres says, I'll take care of her. As Ceres leaves with Haruka, he says, Brother Kazuma, I'll definitely bring Haruka happiness. Meanwhile, over at the hero party home, Mel yells out, I can't take it anymore. This is such a never-ending pain. Zek says, come on, Mel, don't be like that. You're already exempt from all work. Mel says, I have to write periodic reports to the church about where and what we're buying, what our plans for future are. Just how did Ceres manage to do this? And that damn church? They get mad at me if my handwriting is bad or we don't have any plans. I can't take it anymore. Lita says, hey, Zekt, I need to do some maintenance on my sword. Think you could take care of laundry today? Zekt says, Lita, I'm a man. I'd rather not wash women's underwear. Just then, Lita says, you sure have it good. Seeing Zekt is confused, she says, that holy sword of yours doesn't need any maintenance. You just need to wipe it clean. My sword, on the other hand, needs constant maintenance or it quickly loses its edge. The other day I almost died because I couldn't cut off an ogre's arm. As Mel says, Maria! Maria lashes out saying, I don't wanna. Mel says, I haven't said anything yet. Maria again says, don't push your work on me. Seeing Maria, Zekt thinks, she just doesn't want to move from there. Then he yells out, ah, fine. This is all my fault. The most important person in the hero's party is not the saint, nor the sage, not the sword saint, but him. Do you all think, Lita asks, we can get Ceres to return? Mel says, I'd wish. We're in trouble without him. Lita says, there's no one better at maintaining swords than Ceres. Maria says, Ceres was the only one I could leave the shopping to since he doesn't buy unnecessary things. Zekt says, we all agree then. Let's bring back Ceres. Lita says, but what do you think he'd ask in compensation for coming back? Zekt says, confused, compensation? Lita says, did you forget? Despite all he did for us, you cruelly kicked him out of the group. Zekt says, I don't remember doing something that bad. Maria says, are you playing dumb? You took off the necklace he gave to Mel as a present, so that you could put yours on her, and made sure he saw that as you kicked him out. It's obvious he was hurt by that. If he were to do the same, would you forgive him? Zekt thinks, if I were in his shoes, I'm sure I would have punched him. But despite everything, he never stopped being kind to us. Meanwhile, Shizuko says as she's with the girls, one for all, and all for one. We promised to share our joys and sorrows, didn't we? As she shows the mark, I'm only telling you because of that promise. Today, I sent Ceres to Haruka's house for a night visit. Misaki says, a night visit? But isn't she already in a good relationship? Shizuko says, Kazuma is a nice person, but I don't think he's interested in Haruka as a woman. Ceres, on the other hand, does see us as women. That's why I'm asking you to abandon your husbands. Go back to being women once again. Be loved as women again. Misaki asks, is such a thing even possible? Misaki says, if this is a lie, let me warn you. I don't care what happens. I will get violent with you. Shizuko says, I'm not telling any lies. Rather, if what I'm saying is true, could you return to your life as adventurers and give me a hand? Sayo, the teary-eyed ice princess who would say, I'll freeze everything that stands before me. Misaki, the berserk black knight who says, I'll chop those demons into mincemeat. Shizuko continues, saying, let us go wild as we once did when we were young. Sayo says, so, what does us returning to being adventurers have to do with Ceres? Shizuko says, discussing it would make this conversation a bit serious. I'm quite furious at my son. Misaki asks, is that because he kicked Ceres out of the party? Shizuko says, yes, because we told him to. He followed those four. Despite all of that, they pushed all that housework and chores onto him. He even had to make money for his own living expenses. It seems Ceres took on all of it without a word of complaint, but in the end, he got kicked out and was left to his own devices. Misaki thinks, I see. So that's what Maria has been up to, giving Ceres all the hardship. As Sayo says, that Mel, she's going to need a proper scolding. I wonder what I should do with her. Shizuko says, because of that, I've been thinking of what to do on my own. And one of the ways is to have all of us marry Ceres and leave this village. Once it's all said and done, those kids won't have a place to return to. Sayo says, so what you're saying is you want us to divorce our husbands and become Ceres' wives? Shizuko says, exactly. I told you because of our oath, but this is also part of the reason. Misaki says, if I'm gone, I think my husband will buy himself a slave to act the part of his second wife. With that, Maria won't have a place there anymore. Misaki says, I'm sure the same applies to me. Sayo asks, but will that do anything to those children? Shizuko says, that's what brings us on to the main topic. What if Ceres, the one kicked out, was actually stronger and worked harder than the hero? Sayo says. That would ruin those children's reputation. As Misaki says, and what you're implying is that we should return to being adventurers and give Ceres a hand. Sayo says, but are we up to par? We're all quite old. Shizuko says, now, you two, I want you to abandon your loveless families and form a party full of love with Ceres. If it's him, he'll take us as wives with open arms. Then she says, now let's get going. I'm going to show you proof. Misaki says, isn't this just your house? Shizuko says, hush, keep it down. No more talking from now on. As Shizuko and the girls enter, she says, my, you were going quite hard at it. Sayo says, I'm a little jealous myself. Shizuko asks, Sayo, Misaki, do you believe me now? Both say in unison, yeah. Seeing them talking, Ceres asks, Shizuko, what's going on here? Misaki says, if Haruka could do it, then so can I. Sayo says, I'm so glad to see how much Ceres has grown up. As Haruka says, zip it, you two. Then Shizuko says, and that's the gist of it. Could you take Sayo and Misaki as well? Ceres says to himself, it's quite sudden, but I'd honestly welcome them as my wives with open arms. However, the part about taking revenge on Zect and the others, not so much. Sure, I was angry after he kicked me out of the party, but I also had this strong feeling of liberation. I was only doing it because they asked me to protect their children. So when they told me they didn't need me anymore, I simply left. That was all. Revenge never even crossed my mind. What's more, once you've been part of the heroes' party, you can still use their privileges. Then Ceres says to the ladies, I'd be happy to take you, but the part about Zect and the rest, I appreciate the sentiment, but I don't want to give them any punishment. Shizuko says, what Zect did to you was wrong. Please think it through. Ceres says, I did, and I don't really hold a grudge against him. Shizuko asks, and him having all the girls to himself? Is that not frustrating? Ceres says, the women I like are Shizuko, Big Sis, Misaki, and Sayo. Broad-minded, kind, and lovely women. All they did was work me hard and kick me out. Besides, you four should know this. The right to polygamy is a special privilege of the heroes' party. Thanks to that, I can take not just Shizuko, but all of you as my wives. Thinking about it that way, I don't really have a reason to hold a grudge. Then Ceres thinks, for the time being, I need to settle the matter with Sayo and Misaki. As Kaido was working, he calls out, Sayo, go bring me some tea. As Sayo says, coming right up. As she goes to get the tea, she says, with the way you said it, you must see people as your slaves or something. But today, Ceres is coming to take me. I'm done being your housework slave as of today. The next day, as Ceres arrives, he says, I'm here now to visit Sayo's husband, Kaido, so that I can take her with me. As Ceres enters, Sayo says, smiling, welcome, Ceres. The person is waiting for you inside. As Ceres says, I'm kinda nervous now. As they enter, Kaido says, you're finally here, Ceres. As Ceres sits down, he says, you've prepared quite the feast. Kaido says, all right, let's begin with a drink. As Ceres says, thanks a lot, sir. Kaido says, for a brat, you've grown quite well. I can see the face of a full-fledged man now. Ceres says, it's all thanks to your help that I managed to get this far. Kaido says, I only taught you how to work the fields and take care of livestock. The adventurer skills you learned were all your hard work. Ceres says, that's wrong. Whenever an adventurer stopped by the village, you would tell them, can you teach this brat a thing or two? That was thanks to you. Kaido says, are you sure that happened? I can't really remember. As Ceres says, to me, the people of this village are like my parents. Kaido says, let's get to business, shall we? I already know why you're here. It's Sayo, right? As Ceres says, yes. Kaido says, if you want Sayo, then she's yours. I don't think Sayo has any good memories of me. When Sayo married me, my father was alive and well, even though he was about to pass away. He would scold Sayo, saying, you must have a girl to produce a fine heir. That's what he would yell at her. Going through that every day must have been pretty tough on Sayo. After my father died, I looked after her for a bit, but the damage was already done. I joined my father in yelling and making her life miserable. This outcome is only natural. Given that you've been after Sayo since you were a brat, I'll allow this. As Ceres hands a bag of gold coins, Kaido says, don't want it. I'm set with Mel's arrangement money. I really wanted you to have Mel, but I guess that's not possible anymore. Therefore, I'm giving you my wife instead of my daughter. As Sayo says, dear, I'm sorry. Kaido says, what are you apologizing for? I didn't protect you from my father. On contrary, I badmouthed you instead. I'm the one who should be apologizing. Ceres asks, then what are you going to do, Kaido? Kaido says, me? When this depressing hag is gone, I'll go get myself some young brides. I'm thinking of getting some young slaves. Sayo says, dear, weren't you talking about how you were sorry about what happened before? Kaito says, yes, I do feel bad about it, but that's all. I'd always pick a young woman over a hag like you. As Sayo yells, I hate you, I really hate you. Kaito says, can't say I like hags either. Ceres, take her out of here already. This depressing hag is souring my mood. As Ceres pulls Sayo out saying, let's be happy. Sayo yells out, I hate you. For real. I really damn hate you. As Ceres comes to Sayo's room, he says, "Are you done cleaning up, Sayo?" Meanwhile, Sayo was on the floor, looking sad as she said, "That stubborn old man. I thought I was going to break up with him and storm out of there, but it felt more like he kicked me out instead. This is so frustrating." Ceres says, "Well, the point is, we got that done. Let's enjoy our new life together, all right?" Sayo says, smiling. "You're right. I'll be done in no time." Seeing Sayo's focus is on a broom on the floor, Ceres asks, "Sayo, what is that broom?" Sayo says, "I used to practice magic with it back when I was little. This brings back memories." As Sayo takes Ceres on her broom, Ceres says, "Amazing. Even Mel can't fly." Sayo says, "She's a sage, so her spells are very potent, but she can't control the power." Ceres thinks, "I can also use the spell Airwalk that allows me to run through the air, but definitely not to such high altitude. No wonder she was a former S-rank adventurer. Her experience is on a whole other level." Just then, Ceres asks, "Hey, Sayo, have you settled down yet?" Sayo says, "You see, after raising my kid and living half my life, I thought I would share the deathbed with that person. Given how old I am, I had no place to go and resigned myself to fate. He treated me like a servant every day. And since he's older than me, I would have had to become his caretaker when he got old. However, once Shizuko told me about you, I thought I could finally be free. I may have been a little pissed towards the end, but if we didn't really need one another, then separating was probably for the best. That's of course assuming you don't dump me. However, Ceres says, "I would never do that." Sayo says, "Do you mean it? But you still have yet to propose to me. You said you've loved me since you were little, but why do you like me? What part of me do you like?" Ceres says, pushing away, "Sayo, if you breathe in my ear," and ends up touching Sayo, who panics and loses control of her broom. As Ceres says, "We're falling, Sayo." Sayo thinks, lost. "A man touched me. It's been so long." Then, as they fall, Ceres says, "Thank goodness the trees cushioned our fall. Are you okay, Sayo?" Then, as they both look in each other's eyes, they kiss each other. Ceres says, "Sayo, this is the only time we'll have for ourselves." Sayo asks, "Shall we do it here?" As Ceres was going to begin, Sayo says, "Wait a moment, please. I'm not going to let the monsters bother us. Shizuko is better at this kind of thing than me, though." She calls out her spell, Magic Barrier, and says, "That'll keep the small fry from getting in." Seeing Sayo attack the monsters, Ceres thinks, "You're way too overpowered, and all of this is done without using a staff to amplify her power. Why, despite having all this power, did you all quit being adventurers to live as simple villagers? Was it just as Shizuko said, that it was merely a matter of being too late to marry? But in that case, they could have had their ex-husbands obey them through their sheer, overwhelming might. Maybe there was another reason why they were living quiet lives in the village. I hope that they'll tell me one day." Just then, Ceres notices and asks, "Sayo, didn't we just pass this way earlier?" Sayo says, "Oh darn, that's so weird. Could it be that we're lost?" As Ceres asks, "You know the way, don't you?" Sayo says, I wanted to spend some more time alone with you. After all, you haven't proposed to me yet, so..." Ceres says, "You're right. How could I force such a lovely woman to say that to me? I'm the lowest of the low." Ceres says, "Sayo, I love you. Please stay with me forever." Sayo says, "Okay, I ended up stealing my daughter's boyfriend." Ceres says, "Mel and I weren't that close to begin with, actually." As they arrive home, Sayo says, "We're home. I'll be in your care starting today." Haruka asks, "You sure took your time coming back?" Shizuko says, "I'll ask Ceres later what you two did." Meanwhile, Ceres goes to visit Masaki's husband, Shuto. As Ceres enters, he says, "Pardon the intrusion." Seeing Ceres, Masaki says, "We were expecting you, Ceres." As Ceres enters, he says, "Haven't seen you in a long time, Shuto." Seeing Ceres, Shuto says, "Yo, Ceres, you're being too stiff. Come on, you're old enough to drink already, right? I have something just for this moment." Seeing the bottle, Ceres says, "That's brandy, isn't it?" Shuto says, "Knowledgeable as ever, Ceres. You're the only person besides Kazuma in this village that gets me." Ceres recalls, thinking, "It was Shuto who taught me how to read, write, and do math. Although I'm a reincarnator, there was a lot I forgot that I needed to recall one by one. While I did, he would praise me a lot, saying that I absorbed knowledge like a sponge." Ceres says to Shuto, "It was thanks to you that I learned a bunch of things." Shuto says, "The real shocker here is that you learned to write and master it by the time you turned 5. Ceres says, "Thanks for the drink. It's always a delight to talk with you and Kazuma." Shuto says, "But it's not very fun to talk with others." "Is that so? You see, I'm unfit to be a parent and a husband. I keep up appearances, but I hated dealing with Maria when she was a baby. What a pain in my ears. Now, enough beating around the bush. You came here today for Misaki, right?" As Ceres says, "That's right." Shuto says, "I don't mind. Go ahead and take her with you." Ceres asks, "Are you sure?" Shuto says, "Didn't I say it earlier? I'm unfit to be a husband. I just don't love Misaki anymore. When Misaki gave birth to Maria, my love for her peaked, but over time, that fire has completely burnt out. Even now, we barely talk to each other at home, so if you want to take her, that's fine by me. Like, I'm sure there are oddballs out there who like mothers and grandmas, probably. Regardless of that, I'm sure you'll make Misaki happy." As Shuto says to Misaki, "You're fine with this too, right, Misaki?" Ceres asks, "What will you do from now on, Shuto?" Shuto says, "I'm so glad you asked. I'm going to buy myself a young slave. You're taking Misaki, who's just no fun at all, and Maria's head is full of nothing but flowers. So I'm buying myself a cute girl with a good head on her shoulders that wants to learn." As Misaki punches the table, she says, "I'm really sorry for being no fun to be around. Hey Shuto, why don't I take you to look at the stars for a bit?" Shuto says, "Misaki, you're not my wife anymore, so you don't have the right to hit me anymore either. Ceres, just take her already, will you?" As Ceres takes Misaki out, he thinks, "Thanks a lot, Shuto." As Shuto exhales, "Now I can read all the books I want." As they come out, Ceres says, "Once we leave the village and find a place to live, let's register as a family." As they stop in front of a church, Ceres asks, "Do you need something with the church?" Misaki says, "Well, you see, that person wasn't interested in weddings and the like, so I never got the chance to wear a dress." As Ceres says, "Is that so?" Misaki says, "Part of it was due to my own embarrassment. So we ended up just filling paperwork and called it a day." Just then Misaki realizes and says, "I've lost so much muscle. Can I even swing a sword like this? All 5 of us are going out on an adventure, right?" Ceres says, "Yeah, but I'll mainly be the one fighting, so..." Misaki says, yelling, "As a knight, I must stand in the front lines. I can't be causing you trouble, Ceres. I'll go put myself to a bit of training." Then, as the ladies arrive, Misaki says, "Sorry to make you all come here. These long years of no exercise is worrying, that's why." Haruka asks, "So you're taking on a rock golem all on your own?" As Misaki goes to deal with it, watching her, Sayo says, "In her prime, a single hit would have been it." Seeing her, the girls decide to give her a hand. As Misaki was fighting, she thinks, "My married life wasn't smooth sailing from the beginning. No matter what I did, he was always indifferent. At some point, I started wondering, why did I rush myself into getting married?" Then, as Misaki slays the golem, Shizuko says, "That was quite the strong attack." Misaki thinks, "Ceres, no matter what enemy attacks may come, or what feelings you give me, I will take them all head-on." Just then Ceres comes, so Misaki says, "Oh, Ceres, where have you been?" Ceres says, "Oh, just taking care of something. More importantly, can you come alone later to the church?" Misaki says, "The church? What was that all about?" And he was really tired for some reason too. Later on in the day, Misaki goes to the church. As she enters, she says, "The door was unlocked. There shouldn't be anyone in here at this time. Ceres, where did you?" Misaki sees the dress and gets surprised. She says, "Oh, Ceres, who would have thought I'd be wearing this sort of dress at my age?" Just then, Ceres comes and says, "Misaki, because I've loved you since I was a kid, I especially loved seeing you smile. So, Misaki, will you marry me?" As Ceres wakes up, Misaki says, "Just stay as you are. You must have worked a little too hard. I'm really glad that you went this far to do this for me. I have to give you something in return." Ceres says, "I think you've already paid me back plenty." As they spend their first passionate time, Misaki says, "You know, there's something I want more than a necklace. A new sword and a set of armor. The ones I have are already in tatters. The 5 of us will go adventuring and make a bigger name for ourselves than Maria and company. I want to be the knight that stands in the front lines protecting the people I care about." On coming back, Ceres says, "We're back." Misaki says, "Please treat me well from now on." As they all gather, Shizuko says, "And that makes all of us. Let us review our future plans. First off, we marry Ceres and leave this village. That way, Zect and company won't have a place to return to. But just leaving may not be enough to dissuade them from coping with their responsibilities. So the second thing is, Sayo says, to have Ceres accomplish more than the hero party, right?" As Haruka says, "I'm itching to go wild." Shizuko says, seeing Ceres, "Ceres, is there something on your mind?" Ceres says, "I just hadn't seen Big Bro Kazuma and the others in a while, so I was reminiscing about how good people they were." Shizuko says, "Good people?" Sayo says, "From your point of view, sure." Haruka says, "Fine, we'll show you." Misaki says, "The true nature of those fools." Haruka says, "I didn't say anything because I wanted an amicable separation, and because he is your dear Big Bro Kazuma, but that guy is a fool bag. His name might as well be Scumma." Sayo says, "Ceres, don't be fooled. Kaido, or rather that guy, likes to speak as if he was some manly man, but in reality, he's just an abusive fool." Misaki says, "Shuto, that person is a child-neglecting piece of junk." Shizuko says, "Ceres, I took the money that you gave Kazuma." Ceres gets angry, saying, "Shizuko, that money was to support Big Bro Kazuma's dream." Haruka slaps him, saying, Idiot. Ceres, you're a wonderful person, but there's no need to give Kazuma any money. Sayo says, they don't need any sort of gratitude, you know? Shizuko says, Ceres, let's assume those 3 people were good, shall we? In that case, why weren't you getting paid? As Ceres says, because I'm the one who took you all. Haruka says, idiot. Think this through. Ceres, when you all got your jobs, we received a literal pile of gold. Sayo says, that money you see, though it was given to the families, those people kept it all for themselves. Haruka says, I was thinking that we could put it in the family budget or split it in half, but they didn't even consider it. Ceres says, you know I don't want anything in the world besides you 4. Becoming a noble, living in a big mansion, surrounded by 11 women and marrying a princess? That's all Zek's dream. Me, personally, I don't see what's so good about that. Living my life with the 4 of you is far better than that. Shizuko cries as she says, you're right. What matters most is our happiness now. Our ex-husbands, Zector and the rest, we need not worry about. The next day, Ceres goes to another town. As he was walking, he says to himself, I came all the way over to the neighboring town to sort out my thoughts alone. I don't really hold a grudge towards Zect and the others, or the ex-husbands. But if I say that I don't want to take revenge on them, Shizuko and the rest will remain in pain. I have to think of something for my dear wives. But the question is what? Just then, Ceres notices his surroundings and says, a slave market. Before they can buy the slaves, if I can play my cards right, I can convince Shizuko and the others. In that case, I'll have to bring him back after all, so that the 5 of us can live happily without any ill feelings. The feudal lord of Jimuna, Count Gameruda, says, long time no see, Mr. Ceres. I was wondering what had become of you after leaving the hero's party. But I hear you earned yourself the title of Dragon Slayer. Ceres says, as he is on his knee, your concern is much appreciated, Count Gameruda. I came here today to bring you this. Count Gameruda says, quite a rare item. Will 100 gold coins do? Ceres says, it's a gift, so I don't need any money for it. Since I have a debt of gratitude with you, I planned on gifting it to you. Count Gameruda says, I cannot accept such a valuable item for free. Besides, I don't remember doing anything special for you, Mr. Ceres. Ceres says, there was something. Thanks to your good rule, despite growing up as an orphan, the people of the village were nice to me. I'll always be thankful for your kindness. As Count Gameruda says, you didn't come here to chit-chat, did you? Ceres says, no, there's someone who got sentenced to the mines for tax evasion. I'll pay his share of the taxes. So could you free Zector? Count Gameruda says, Zector, he's a man with a rotten reputation in the village, a man no one would save. Yet, you wish to lend him a hand, Mr. Ceres? Ceres says, yes, he wasn't a bad person from the get-go. He took good care of me when I was a kid, so I want to repay him for that. As the Count agrees, the guard comes with Zector and says, Lord Ceres, I brought Zector on orders of the Count. Seeing Ceres, Zector says, Ceres, I'm sorry. As Ceres says, let's return to the village. Along the way, he says, you sold Shizuko, didn't you? Why? Had you not been selling her, I wouldn't have been the first in line to buy her. Zector says, come to think of it, I remember we made some sort of promise like that when you were a kid. Now I can only blame myself for succumbing to temptation. Ceres says, by some twist of fate, I happened to buy her and made her my wife. Do you regret your actions? As Zector says, yes. Ceres says, then you should apologize to her. As they arrive home, Ceres says, now go be a good punching bag for my wife. As Zector says, hey Ceres. Shizuko opens the door, saying, you're back, Ceres? And who's that with? On seeing it's Zector, she yells, Zector, you finally showed your face? Have you prepared yourself? As Ceres leaves Zector with Shizuko and the others to deal with, he says to himself, my life is so puzzling. The people I loved when I was a child are all my childhood mothers. I fell in love at first sight. Other people won't believe it. That love can actually blossom. All right, let's do this. As Ceres comes back, he sees Zector on the floor. As he takes him in his lap and calls out, Uncle? Shizuko says, it's okay, Ceres, because this was healed by magic. Haruka says, even though he almost died once. The next day, Ceres takes the ex-husbands and goes to meet Orkman, an adventurer who owns a harem of slave girls and is a middleman for slave trades. As Ceres says, Orkman, please open your store. Shudo says, I think buying costs a lot of money. Ceres says, I'm worried about you all being single. I would like to give a present to express gratitude for yesterday. Zector says, Ceres, this, including me, wouldn't be good, right? Ceres says, you used to be a good person. Treat your new wife like how you cared for me long ago. Just then, Orkman says, well, all is ready now. The best slave brought to you by Ceres. As Ceres comes back, Shizuko asks, what does this mean? Haruka says, they are all happy. What does this mean? Ceres says, wait, I will explain now. First of all, choosing an elf for village chief is to make Zect sad. A hero cannot marry or have a relationship with demi-humans, and heroes cannot own any slaves, and even if Zect wanted to, he can't do it. As Shizuko says, well, it's true. What about Zector? Ceres says, it's a funny story. Zektor's wife comes from the most jealous race among demi-humans. There will be no acceptance of cheating anymore. Seeing Shizuko is confused, he says, if he continues to cheat, he will be getting punches and kicks from her. Worst case, he will be bitten and will lose 3 inches. This is the revenge for selling Shizuko. He will never be able to cheat again. Think about it. If Zect found out that his father married a young, beautiful girl the same age as his lover, Shizuko says. So, the story goes like this, huh? Haruka asks, Ceres, what about Kazuma's couple? Ceres says, a girl who works as a maid in a noble family. That's not Brother Kazuma's ideal person as a chef. What brother wants is someone like a young sister, who can take many matters such as accounting and cleaning. I'm sure he'll be really pissed. Kaito-san's wife is a former mercenary. She herself said, the only thing I wanted is to fight and use my body. She's more aggressive than Kaito-san and could even break his limbs. He can't resist her, so he has no choice but to live under her. Sayo says, so it must be a family that always has fights. Ceres says, Kaito thinks Sayo is obedient and kind, which made him look down on her a lot. Also, there will be a deeper bond by talking with fists. I hope his oppressive nature will improve a bit. Misaki says, Ceres, I guess that mine has something hidden too, right? Ceres says, Shuto-san's wife is a daughter of a former nobleman. She is knowledgeable and Shuto-san won't be able to win against her. He can't overwhelm her with strength either. Misaki says, his life will be a chaos. Just like that, huh? Ceres says, how is it? I'm looking for ways to bend everyone's nature. Misaki asks, but that's not all. What about the kids? Ceres says, looking at the slaves. Don't you think that they all look awfully familiar? Sayo says, I got it just now. As Misaki says, I can't believe it. Ceres says, I think those girls will definitely hate it, where their father lives with women around the same age who also have faces similar to them. Moreover, can they go home like that without their mother? Ceres continues, saying, after that, we will leave this village together. They will have no place to return. We can go to the capital and live in peace. How is it? Shizuko says, that's right, let's enjoy life in the capital. As Haruka says, first, we need to find a room that can accommodate 5 people. Sayo asks, how about a suite? As Misaki says, it will probably be very costly. Ceres says, it's okay, I can make money from hunting. Haruka says, Ceres, don't act cool all by yourself. I'll help you too. As Sayo whispers to Haruka, Haruka, I know something that can help him. As Ceres and the girls were leaving the village, Ceres thinks, there is one matter that is kept silent. I'm afraid that maybe Zect won't come back. If Zect defeats the Demon King, he will become a noble, or a prince, for sure. They'll be shocked when they return. After that, they won't come back to the village. When Demon King defeats them, and no longer live a normal life, only in cases like that. Meanwhile, over with the hero party, everything is a mess. As Zect says, why is it like this? Zect says, we can't do everything that Ceres did for us all. We can't even coordinate in battle properly. Ogre Kings are giving us a hard time now, despite them being a piece of cake before. There's only one thing I can do. Allow me to say this in advance, I'm sorry. Lyta says, we know. As Mel says, you're going to offer him one of us so that Ceres comes back. Maria says, are we right? Technically, it's only between me or Lyta, given that Mel hurt Ceres. Mel says, since we were lovers, I'd like to give my apologies and get his forgiveness. Zect says, looking sad, sorry for fussing about this, but if he were to say so, I'd offer all 3 of you. As Zect looks down, he thinks, they finally realized. The world is a vast place. Right now, the Saint, Sage, and Sword Saint are no more than mere dirty village girls. If I were to rank women between top, middle, or bottom, they'd no longer be in the middle. They're at the top of the bottom. Once the party returns to its former glory and the Demon King is slain, what will be waiting for me are princesses to marry and noble concubines. I'll give them all to you, Ceres. That will bring you back. Ain't that right, best buddy? Lita thinks, I've disliked Ceres ever since I was little. My parents doted on him a lot since he was smart, which really pissed me off. That's why I was always mean to him, but Ceres never got mad at me. I'm sorry, Zect, but I'm sure that I'd be happier if I were with Ceres instead. Mel thinks, I'm an idiot. I was so blindsided by being a concubine of the hero that I hurt someone precious to me. I called him my lover, but it would be more accurate to call him a combination of a brother and a father figure. When I was afraid Zect wouldn't choose me and asked him for advice, he said, if you're ever alone, I'll be there for you. Ceres, let's be a proper couple this time. Maria thinks, Zect, I didn't like you at first. I gave in to your enthusiasm, started dating you, then fell for you. But if you're going to dump me that easily, then don't try to hit on me in the first place. This is so frustrating. To begin with, my first love isn't you. It's Ceres. Talking to him feels as if I'm talking to someone older and makes me feel at ease. I'm sure I'd be happier with him than being Zekt's wife. As Zect says, and that's why I need you to let me contact Ceres. As Zect asks Father Mitsui, he says, denied. The king has given the royal decree that a hero cannot stay still or fall back, but advance forth. Zect pleads, saying, why not? We're just going to pick Ceres up. Father Mitsui says, Denied. Take a look around you. Those are the refugees from nearby villages. If the hero had not stayed still in this city, their village wouldn't have been destroyed by orcs. Seeing the girls are worried, Zekt says, "That was my bad. We'll leave tomorrow." "No, we'll leave right now." Meanwhile, the ladies were setting their new home. After several days, as they were alone, Haruka asks, "Is this really all right?" Sayo says, "I guess it can't be helped since he loves us so much." Haruka says, "But I want to hunt with Ceres. Right now, he's hunting a dragon in order to afford this lifestyle, right?" Shizuko says, "He doesn't want his loved ones to be hurt, and he'd be happy if we were to stay beautiful." Haruka says, "I get that, but he won't let us help him." Sayo says, "We'll just polish ourselves as women to please Ceres, since we can't do much else." As Ceres comes back, Haruka says, "Ceres, we've had enough, let us work too." Ceres says, "Sure, that's fine." As the girls think, "That's fine?" Ceres says, "I think I've saved up enough money, so it's a good time." Shizuko asks, "Just how many dragons have you hunted?" Ceres says, "I think all of the ones around the capital." Recalling their names, he says, "I'd say about 100. Maria asks, "What do we even do with that much money?" Ceres says, "Well, I had someone make some hunting equipment for you all. It's ready now, so let's go pick it up." Then, as the ladies get their new equipment, Ceres says, "Since it's been a while for you, how about we start slow with some ogres?" The ladies say in unison, "Sure." As they had finished them, Ceres asks, "Why did you quit being adventurers?" Shizuko says, "We were tired. We were supposed to be fighting for the people." Haruka says, "But we ended up fighting people and they got scared of us." Misaki says, "So we quit being adventurers." As Sayo says, "We wanted to be normal." Meanwhile, over at the Dragon World, Master Bauer says, "Our kind are being hunted one by one." The informer says, "Yes, even the Water and Ice Dragon and the Storm King Dragon." Master Bauer asks, "Just what army did it? Or was it the hero's party?" The informer says, "I'm afraid to tell you that this was all done by a single person." Master Bauer says, "A single person? Either way, we can't let a person who hunted this many dragons roam free." Black Dragon. Black Dragon says, "Here." The King Dragon says, "Investigate this man, and if the situation calls for it, finish him." As Black Dragon comes out, he says to himself, "Good grief, Master Bauer is getting on in years. Is he seriously sending me to deal with a mere mortal? Has he forgotten that I slaughtered the entire hero's party and their country 1,200 years ago? Me, trampling bugs? What a damn pain, man." Then again, Master Bauer will wipe me out if I keep complaining. He may be old, but he's still the ruler of Hades. Even I, one of the greatest dragon lords that can kill the goddess, am no match for him. As he enters the human realm, Black Dragon says, "Well, let's just get this over and done with, so that I can get wasted." Meanwhile, Ceres was thinking, "Recently someone's been following me. What's more, their presence is absolutely terrifying. Even though I'm with people as skilled as Shizuko and the others, they don't feel the murderous intent directed at me. I don't want to get them involved in this." So he says to the ladies, "I'm going to go shopping for a bit." Just then, Ceres stops and looks back, saying, "Are you the one that's been following me?" Black Dragon says, "Huh, so you noticed me." As Ceres says, "Not hard when your killing intent is so strong. As for that terrifying feeling you give, are you one of the 4 heavenly kings? Or perhaps you're the Demon King?" Black Dragon gets angry as he says, "Huh? Demon King? 4 heavenly kings? My name is Black Dragon, the strongest of the 5 great dragon lords, the Dragon Royals. Don't mix me with those lowly demons, will you?" Ceres says, "Right. For the Dragon Royals, even the Demon King is nothing but a small fry. They're closer to gods." Ceres bows, saying, "My name is Ceres. Lord Black Dragon, how could I humbly be of assistance?" Black Dragon says, "Despite being a mere human, you've slain countless dragons. I commend your strength." As Ceres says, "It is an honor to hear such words." Black Dragon says, "Therefore, with the greatest respect I can give you, I challenge you to a duel. Dragons revere the strong, but you've killed too many dragonkin, so we'll take the duel as a compromise." Ceres says, "A novice like myself could never hope to challenge a grand, godlike being such as yourself. I wish to decline." Black Dragon says, "In this forest, there's a mountain with a crater on top. That's where we'll fight. To make it fair, I'll give you a handicap. Besides fighting and beating me, if you manage to escape to the forest, you win, and I won't dragonify for the battle." As Ceres is shocked, Black Dragon says, "Those are the rules. Now let me take you there." Dragonification. As Black Dragon takes Ceres away, he thinks, "Even without dragonification, my opponent is one of the great dragon lords and the forest is kilometers away. And right when my life is so happy." Shizuko says, "Is Ceres all right?" Haruka says, "He seemed like he had something on his mind." Shizuko says, "Yeah, and I also have a bad feeling." Misaki says, I get that he was trying to not worry us, but we can't leave him on his own. He headed in the direction of the forest. As the ladies arrive, they call out, Ceres! Ceres! Meanwhile, seeing them, Black Dragon says, the game is in progress. Don't disturb us. Sayo sees him, saying, Who? Just then Bauer comes forward, saying, I am the Hades dragon, Bauer, the one who rules Hades. Haruka says, Hades dragon? As Sayo asks, What do you mean? Haruka says, Are you the one after Ceres? Tell us. Bauer gets angry, saying, What a boisterous group of ladies. As he transforms, he says, Our business is with that man. We don't like pointless killing, so scram. As Shizuko thinks, worried, Ceres. Black Dragon says to Ceres, Where are you hiding? How long do you plan on running away? Come fight me or I'll melt away every rock in this place. Ceres comes out saying, Wait a moment, you promised not to dragonify. Those are dragon wings. As Black Dragon comes back on the ground, he says, Fair enough, there are dragon wings. My bad. As Ceres runs, he thinks, I have to get away as soon as possible. Just then, Black Dragon corners him, saying, You're too slow. Ceres stops and says, To think I'd have to use this so soon. Seeing him, Black Dragon says, So you're finally going to go on the offensive. Good, I'll take it head on. Ceres says, Anti-demon secret technique, Carolina attack. As the bag hits Black Dragon, he says, hurting, Ah, that hurts. My eyes. Ceres says, This technique exploits the weakness of magic since the pain can't be nullified. Now that I have the chance, he summons Airwalk. As Ceres strikes Black Dragon, he says, Just a little more. As Black Dragon strikes Ceres, saying, You've really done it now. Just finish off. Ceres says, You damn coward. These are dragon claws, and this place is already the forest. As Ceres falls on the ground, Black Dragon says, Damn, I finished him with claws in the end. As promised, you're the winner. However, I can't do anything about someone who's already finished. At least I will grant you the honor of having bested a dragon lord. You're the winner, Ceres. As proof of that, I will grant you my liver and my blood. Whether or not this ends up in failure is up to you now, Ceres. Meanwhile, Haruka says, I've got a bad feeling about Ceres. As Sayo says, then we have no choice. Seeing him transform, Haruka says, No way. As Sayo says, a Hades dragon must be divine class. We can't beat him. Haruka says, But if we don't do something, Ceres is going to die. Shizuko rises, saying to Bauer, We have a request. Overlook us. And don't kill Ceres. Bauer says, Black Dragon, you fool. Head back to the mountain. The ladies run into the forest as Shizuko says, Let's hurry. The others say in unison, Yeah. As Shizuko wipes her tears, she says, Thank goodness your clothes are all bloody, but you don't have any injuries. Getting up, Ceres thinks, I thought he had clawed me from behind and finished me. Anyways, the point is that I'm back, and I just have this feeling that they won't be coming after my life anymore. As Shizuko asks, Can you stand? Ceres says, Yes, but my clothes are all tattered. My body's all muddied up too. I'm heading back first so I can buy some new clothes and bathe before going home. Sayo says, We're still worried. Let's just go together. As Ceres runs off, he says, I'm fine. Really? All right, see you later. As Ceres was sitting in the public bath, he thinks, Something weird is going on. I've got no wounds anywhere, and my body is strangely hot. It's nothing like the fever from being sick. It's a lot closer to being filled with fighting spirit. But the bigger issue is my lower body. Even though I'm in cold water, this is weird. As Ceres comes out, he says to himself, Following my battle with the Black Dragon, my body's gotten weird. To be specific, my lower body. They'll worry if I'm late, so let's get back. As he comes home, Shizuko says, Welcome back, Ceres. How's your body? Ceres says, It's fine already. By the way, how did you know where I was? Shizuko says, We were chasing after you until this Hades dragon showed up, and for some reason he told us where you were. Misaki says, We tried fighting it, but we didn't stand a chance at all. Ceres says, I see. I'm just glad you didn't get hurt. Though, I doubt they'll keep coming after me. Seeing Ceres, Sayo says, By the way, Ceres, you've been hunched over for a while now. Is something wrong? Ceres turns red as he says, Well, I can't calm it down. As Haruka asks, What's gotten you so worked up? Sayo says, We'll make sure to calm you down. Misaki says, We'll be doing our best tonight. Ceres says, But right now, I don't think I can hold back the beast inside me. Asking me to be gentle is just… Misaki says, Don't worry, we'll take it. So you just worry about letting everything go. Haruka says, You're always putting yourself in harm's way for us. Shizuko says, So leave it all to us, okay? As Ceres calms down, he says, It's finally calmed down, but I could keep going if I felt like it. What's more, I'm not sleepy or tired. What in the world happened to this body? As Ceres goes out to eat, the chef says, Only Orkman could eat multiple of our steaks. Can you handle it? As Ceres eats, he says, Yup. As he keeps on eating, the chef says, That's all the meat we had. please spare us. Then Ceres goes to practice combat. He thinks, as expected, my body feels a little bit more toned. What's more, no matter how much I swing my blade, my body doesn't get tired. Just then, a dragon comes. Seeing him, Ceres says, "A rock dragon, huh? I'd rather not see any dragons because of the black dragon." But the rock dragon bows, saying, "Great one, my king, it is an honor to meet you." On being able to hear the dragon, Ceres says, "There's a voice in my head. Is that rock dragon speaking? Let's try sending my thoughts." Then Ceres says to the dragon, "Are you talking to me? I'm a human." The dragon says, "What a nice jest, but I can see it clearly. The form of a great black dragon. I'm sure there's a reason you've turned into a human. I shall excuse myself then, great dragon lord." As the dragon leaves, Ceres says, recalling, "When I was finished fighting the black dragon, something definitely must have happened. I can't reach any other conclusions, but what in the world did he do?" Just then, a beast comes flying. Seeing it, Ceres says, "A wyvern," but it lands near him and licks him. Seeing this, Ceres says, "Do you want me to pet you?" As he was petting, he says, "Most likely, I won't be able to hunt dragons again. In exchange for saving my life, I seem to be under some sort of curse that doesn't let me fight dragons. I guess I should ask the black dragon to find out. A strong body with an extraordinary stamina, and the power to speak with dragons. The thing I can say for sure is that these powers will come in handy for protecting my wives." Meanwhile, over with Zekt, he asks, "A lot of dragons are coming towards us?" The priest says, "Yes, that's what Pope Romerus said." Zekt says, "I've never heard of so many dragons moving at once." The priest says, "We don't know the reason either, but it appears they're running away in fear of something. The dragons seem to be heading to the metropolis of Bushia. If you don't stop or divert them, the people of the city will die. I wish you luck." Zek says, "But as we are now, a herd of dragons is too much." The priest says, "If you can't do it on your own, then cooperate with the Lord of Bushia, or go to the Adventurers Guild or the church to get help. Otherwise, what's the point of your hero privilege? I'm sure that Mr. Ceres would have jumped into action without complaining, as you are." Over at Lord Bushia's estate, Lord Bushia says, "Hero Zekt, I understand the situation. I'm willing to lend you as many knights and regular soldiers as you need. So, how many knights should I deploy? Should they wield swords or spears? How many soldiers? What's the strategy?" Zekt thinks, "I've got no clue." He says to the Lord, "I leave that to you." The Lord says, laughing, "Could it be that none of you have any commanding experience? I understand. I shall arrange the soldiers myself." As the hero party was fighting the dragons, Lita says, "Zekt, this is too reckless. Let's retreat and fight back with the soldiers they've gathered." Zekt says, "No, I've got my pride too. Staying in the front lines is something I won't budge on. The hero is the one who is brave. Using a sword, I lose to the sword saint. With magic, I don't hold a candle to the sage, and I could never attain the healing magic of the saint. However, I have bravery, the will to stand against any formidable enemy without fear. That's what being a hero means." The soldiers say in unison, "They're coming here." As they begin to retreat, Zekt says, "Damn, no one is coming with me. God damn it. So what if I'm alone?" As he slays the dragon, he walks away and faints after taking a few steps. As Zekt wakes up, he says, "I fainted, huh? My left arm. Yeah, I can't move it at all." As he looks around, "Where's everyone?" Zekt sees the girls are still under the barrier, so he says, "They are still inside the barrier? Well, at least they're unharmed. We have to head to the city." Zekt sees everyone is finished. As he comes to the headquarters, the officer says, "The city lord is dead." As Zekt says, shocked, "What?" A young boy throws a stone at him, saying, "Give me back my mother. You're no hero. You're a devil." The officer says, "Wait, despite how he is, he's still the hero. Calm down." Another officer says, "Why did you choose to fight?" Zekt says, "Our opponents were dragons, creatures we can't communicate with. I didn't have a choice but to fight." The officer says, "As it turns out, those dragons were in the middle of escaping from something. Had you not fought the dragons and made them go berserk, while the city may have been destroyed, it's likely that no one would have died." Zekt says, stating his point. "But the church," the officer says, "We heard what they said, and they didn't tell you to fight. Damn you fool." Zekt says, "That can't be. The church told me." Zekt recalls the priest's words and thinks, he didn't say anything about fighting. As Zekt falls to the ground, the officer says, "The church never thought you would be able to defeat that horde, and we were fools to think you were a hero. Get out of here already." Another man says, "And don't come back." As he came back to the girls, Maria was still repeating the spell, Holy Wall. Seeing them, Zekt scolds, saying, "Quit the easygoing life you girls have. Let's go." He gets angry as he punches the barrier, saying, "Release the barrier already, will you? Release it, you dumb fools." As they come back, Zekt speaks to Pope Romerus, saying, "Pope Romerus, I'm truly sorry." Pope Romerus says, "I do not blame you all." Zekt gets shocked as he asks, "Why is that? My actions have killed thousands." Pope Romerus says, "They died on their own. So you don't need to fret over that, Lord Zect. I made a promise to Lord Ceres, so I don't blame you. Seeing Zect is confused, Pope Ramirez says, I see Lord Ceres didn't tell you about it. Previously, when you failed a quest, about 30 people died. Pope Ramirez recalled the time Lord Bushia said to Ceres, this is an absolute disgrace for the heroes' party. How do you plan to take responsibility for this? What's more, why did you come here on your own, Lord Ceres? Ceres said, because one of us will suffice. We did everything we could. That's all I came to say. Lord Bushia said, after all the people that died, you can't even apologize. Ceres got angry as he said, who in the world is saying they want to fight the Demon King? You force us into doing life-threatening work no one else is willing to do, then blame us when things go wrong? Fine then, we'll quit our work as the heroes' party. The priest said, Lord Ceres, what is it you wish to say? As Ceres let go of Lord Bushia's collar, he said, you see, if I were the Pope, I'd end the war in a single month. We could kill the Demon King easily. Pope Romerus said, if what you say is true, then let's do it. I'll take responsibility and transfer all authority to you. Ceres said, all right, here's the plan. Those who don't participate or run away will be exiled or put on death row. If you do that, rather than relying on the heroes' party, you have a sure way to win, a sure way for humanity to win. All you need is to say the word. Let's do it. All of humanity against the demons. Pope Romerus said, getting angry. Have you gone mad? Doing this will destroy everyone's livelihoods. They could get injured or even die. Do you get it yet? Ceres said, they don't want to do it themselves, so they force the hero to do it instead, or am I wrong? That's why you're sacrificing Zect and the others. Their livelihoods are unstable. They could get injured or even die. Yet they will keep living like that for the foreseeable future. However, putting all of humanity in their shoes for a single month would wipe out the demons. Now, I believe you said you'd give me full authority, right? Pope Romerus said, please wait. I take back what I said. I can't do that. I admit we're pushing everything onto you all. Ceres said, if you get that, then don't complain when you're forcing this on us. That's all. No one has the right to make us responsible for their deaths. They're living their lives merrily while selfishly betting on us, even though we don't want to do it. That's all this is. As Zect says, I didn't know Ceres did that. Pope Romerus says, some archbishops are against it. However, I couldn't argue back against Lord Ceres. That's why I decided not to lay any blame on the heroes' party. Recalling when Ceres left, Zect thinks, what a fool I've been. I kicked out the person who understood us best, Ceres. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, the girls were on their honeymoon with Ceres. As Shizuko says, Kohena is a very erotic place, isn't it? As Sayo says, I believe it was built by people who transmigrated or reincarnated in the past. Therefore, Ceres says, yeah, incidentally, Kohane's specialty is black eggs, apparently. The first thing they do is go sightseeing. As the ladies were going their own ways, Sayo says, holding a box, oh, Ceres, as he replies, yeah. Sayo says, it's got this intriguing pattern that draws me in. Ceres says, I'll give it to you as a present. As Sayo says, huh? Are you sure? Ceres says, sure thing. Then Sayo asks, did you ever give Mel a present? Ceres says, well, I did give her a necklace. She was crying because Zek didn't choose her. Sayo says, how kind of you. So, what did you say when you gave it to her? There's no point in hiding it, you know. Ceres says, even if you're alone, I'll be by your side. Sayo asks, oh, did you? So, in other words, did you do the deed? Ceres says, we didn't. I didn't lay a hand on your daughter. Sayo smiles, saying, that's fine. She is an adult already. But Ceres, are you really okay with a mother like me? Ceres says, so long as it's you, Sayo. As Ceres leaves Sayo, he finds Shizuko by the lake. Seeing Ceres, Shizuko asks, oh, Ceres, did something happen? Ceres says, no, it's just, you blend with the scenery so well that you looked like a work of art, so Shizuko says, thanks, I find it calming here too. Perhaps my ancestors came to Kohani before as well. She picks an acorn and says, how nostalgic. Long ago you gave me an acorn necklace. I treasure it to this day. As Ceres takes her on a boat ride, he thinks, thank goodness she's in a better mood. As Shizuko says, the breeze feels nice. Suddenly a fish leaped, and she said, ah, Ceres, a fish just leaped. You know, this feels like a date between two youngsters. Then as Shizuko sits back down, she says, it's embarrassing to get excited at my age. Ceres says, you're still young and beautiful, Shizuko. Shizuko says, recalling her captive time, you know, ever since you found me back then, I get to enjoy this happiness. You satisfy me every day. So while I may be a grandma, I also want to satisfy you, Ceres. Ceres and the ladies were in the private bath when he fainted. As Ceres wakes up, Misaki says, Ceres-san, are you awake? Haruka says, honestly, what a handful you are. Ceres gets up. Sayo says, you passed out from the heat, so we carried you. Later in the night, after they made out and Ceres fell asleep, The ladies chatted. Sayo said, "We managed to achieve our goal. I've learned the trick to make him feel good." Sayo says, "I'm sure Ceres-kun was also excited for this trip." Misaki says, "I'm sure that's the case, but if his desires continue like this, it might be tough with just the four of us." Sayo says, "Even so, I myself want to satisfy him as much as I can." Misaki says, "I'm sure Ceres feels the same way. I think he truly loves every one of us." Shizuko says, "Being loved like this really boosts my confidence as a woman. It feels like I'm back to my younger days again." Haruka says, "In my case, I was like a big sister, so it's a bit complicated. I never expected he'd grow up to be such a great guy." Shizuko says, "We're really happy, aren't we? From now on, let's protect Ceres no matter what happens." The next day in a carriage, the princess says, "Are you sure he is the Dragon Slayer boy?" King Zanmark says, "Yes, and it seems he likes older women. All four of his wives are older than you." Princess Marianne says, "Well, even older than me at 28. But would someone like me, a woman who's already given birth, really be accepted?" Meanwhile, seeing the carriage, Sayo says, "Oh, a unicorn carriage. Isn't that the royal carriage of Samarl Kingdom?" Misaki says, "Since Kohen is within Zamarl's territory, could it be a leisure trip?" Haruka says, "The royal family? No way." As they approach, Shizuko says, "It seems like they have business with us." As Ceres says, "I've got a bad feeling about this." King Zanmark says, "Are you Lord Ceres?" As Ceres says, "Yes." The king says, "I am Zanmark IV, king of Samarl Kingdom. I have come to bestow upon you the title of hero, and I have a favor to ask." Ceres says, "The title of hero and a favor? And isn't she the first Princess Marianne?" Marianne says, "Everyone, long time no see." Shizuko says, "Long time no see, Marianne. Have you been well?" Ceres thinks, "Is she an acquaintance of them?" Dobell says, "I'm the Prime Minister, Dobell. We'll stand out in the middle of the road, so let me show you to a villa in Kohen. Sir Ceres, would you mind accompanying us?" As Ceres bows, King Zanmark says, "I hold you in quite high regard, Sir Ceres." As Ceres says, "Your words are wasted on me." King Zanmark says, "This is our first time having a real conversation. The plan you wrote back then on behalf of the hero was absolutely brilliant. The work of a seasoned civil servant. I cannot wrap my head around how Brave's party would kick out such a talent. What a waste. We don't need Braves anymore. We supported them since we're a nation that produces Braves," but Dobell says, "King, it's about time you bestow the title upon him." As Ceres is bestowed with the hero title, King Zanmark says, "The title itself is not a job, but it counts as 4 professions. And in Zanmar, it allows you to ask for direct help from the nobles, my vassals, or me, in case of emergencies. The decision is not mine alone. It has been agreed upon by all nobles across the country." Ceres thinks, "This might be troublesome later on, but if I say no now, I won't be allowed to stay in the country." So he says to the king, "It's an honor to be so well regarded. I shall humbly accept the title." As King Zanmark hands the title to Ceres, he says, "I'm considering giving you the title of nobility and the princess's hand in marriage. Keep working hard for our country." Recalling King Zanmark has 2 daughters, Marianne, who married into the kingdom of Balta, and Princess Marin. Ceres thinks, "Wasn't Princess Marin going to be betrothed to the brave Zekt after he slayed the Demon King?" King Zanmark says, "The princess you will take if you perform well will be Marianne. The kingdom of Balta has been destroyed. Besides, I'm aware of your taste in women." Ceres thinks, "The first princess? So that's why she was there. If things go south, there's a chance I will become royalty, and I can say goodbye to my peaceful life." King Zanmark also says, "Truth is, there's a dragon-like creature living near Kohani. Since it's a resort, we don't want to bring too much attention to it, so I want you to slay it." The next day, Ceres and the ladies go to slay the dragon. Ceres says, "By the way, you seem to know Princess Marianne." Shizuko says, "We had an adventurer-client relationship, but that was about 10 years ago. The Demon King had invaded Balta, the country Marianne married into. By then, we were already retired adventurers, but we told you kids that we wanted to have a women's trip. In truth, we had received a mission from King Zanmark to rescue Princess Marianne." In the flashback, Princess Marianne says, "We were suddenly attacked. The maid told me to hide. Were there any survivors?" Haruka said, "We checked." Princess Marianne says, "Is that so? So my husband and son." Ceres says, "So that's the story. So if you want to marry Marianne, we'd happily welcome her." Ceres says, "I haven't thought that far ahead. More importantly, I'm detecting things up ahead. I'll go talk things out and then we're out of here." Sayo says, "That's quite the strange ability. You could even have dragons be your pets, right?" Ceres says, "Yeah, but I still don't fully understand these powers yet." Seeing the beast, Misaki says, "Hold on, is this a dragon?" Ceres says, "I don't know. Let me try calling out to it." Seeing it's not working, Ceres says, "It's not working." Haruka says, "In that case, we have no choice." Shizuko says, "But to fight?" Haruka says, Ceres, let's finish it off. But Ceres says, wait, it just talked. As Shizuko says, I don't think we can afford to wait. As Shizuko summons the holy wall, the dragon breaks it as she says, everyone dodge. As the wall breaks, Shizuko says, your average dragon wouldn't have been able to break through. As Sayo says, seems he's a little tough. As the ladies make a strategy and attack it, Ceres says, so it was really asking for it. Shizuko asks, what's wrong, Ceres? Ceres says, Shizuko, that thing is a dragon, or rather, was one. I don't know what happened to it, and while I really wanted to help it, all I can do is quickly put it out of its misery. Sis, Misaki, I want you to drill a hole as deep as you can on its back where its heart would be. As Haruka says, okay, Misaki says, leave it to us. Ceres says, Shizuko, cast a protective spell on them. Shizuko says, all right. Then Ceres says, Sayo, cast a spell to freeze it. Think absolute zero will work? Sayo says, since it's that big, it might only stop it for a few seconds. That'd be plenty. As Ceres summons, enchantment magic, flame. We're going to throw magic into its body. Shizuko says, let the battle begin. As Ceres stood before the slain dragon, Shizuko said, Ceres, are you hurt? After dealing with the dragon, King Zanmark says, my, you say you've already defeated the menace? As Ceres says, yes, King Zanmark says, as expected of you, Lord Ceres. Even the rumors fall short of your might. I'll reward you right away. Why don't you meet with Marianne while we prepare it? She also wishes to speak with you. As Ceres says, understood. He goes to meet Marianne. As he comes over, Ceres says, Princess Marianne, I'm Ceres. Marianne says, Lord Ceres, it's an honor to speak with you. Looking at you close, you truly are quite young, and yet I hear that you're valiant enough to earn the title of hero, and congratulations on taking 4 wives. Ceres says, that's right, you're also as renowned, and as far as I've heard, Princess Marianne, you look absolutely beautiful. Marianne says, quite the flatterer, huh? But that is all behind me. In our society, women lose their worth as they age. Not to mention, I've had children. I'm a woman that has given birth. I'm sure father already told you, but me becoming your wife is just ridiculous, isn't it? As Ceres says, I wouldn't mind. Marianne says, is that so? Ceres says, same applies with my 4 wives. Beautiful women are beautiful regardless of their age, so. Marianne says, I am not very good with housework, but if you need political backing, I can help you as a woman who studied to become a monarch. And also at night, I will devote all of myself to satisfy you. I can't fight like Shizuko and the others. All I can do is pray for your safety and await your return. Ceres says, I have no complaints with you, Princess Marianne, though I do have some qualms about belonging to a royal family. Marianne says, my father holds you in high regard, and I myself would love to have such a gentleman as my. Suddenly, Ceres gets a message. As he says, huh? An urgent transmission from the guild? Sally says, it's Sally from the Adventurers Guild. Do you remember me? As Ceres says, yeah. Sally says, you see, something terrible has happened. This would cause a huge fuss, so there's a gag order in place. Please take a look at this. Sally shows the hero party is held captive. Sally says, the 4 members of the hero party. They were defeated by one of the Demon King's 4 heavenly kings, Strongarm Maimon. As Ceres is shocked, Sally says, thus far, they haven't killed anyone, but their execution will take place in 7 days. As the last former member of the hero party, they want to fight you. Meanwhile, some hours ago, Zect was in his room thinking, we challenged the dragon swarm without any strategy and were completely crushed. We felt fear unlike any we had ever experienced, and that broke the hearts of all 3 of them. Should we continue our adventure to defeat the Demon King's army? No. We've reached our limit. As Zect tells what he wants to Pope Romulus, Romulus says, Zect, you're absolutely pathetic. You're just pushing everything onto Lord Ceres. Zect asks, what do you mean? Pope Romulus says, I told you that I had spoken with him before, didn't I? Zect says, right, you did. If you held us responsible, you'd abandon the hero party and have humanity wage an all-out war against the demon army. Pope Romulus says, after that I had a conversation with Ceres. Pope Romulus has a flashback. Ceres said, I know of people that can issue orders to humanity without the Pope's permission. Pope Romulus says, Lord Ceres said that if I didn't allow you to quit being heroes, then he'd use that law to declare war on the Demon King, even if he were to sacrifice a lot of people. He said, my childhood friends are more important than a bunch of people I don't know. Pope Romulus said, Lord Ceres has recently been granted the title of hero. If someone runs away from their responsibilities, then that means someone else has to take care of them. As of now, your position as a hero and your remaining 3 party members are now dismissed. Return your holy sword and other holy equipment to the church post-haste. Thanks for all your work thus far. As Zect was in his room, he thinks, Ceres, just who are you? I've borrowed books from Uncle Shuto and studied them since I was little. Is it even possible to speak to the Pope like that? Becoming the hero and carrying all that responsibility by yourself is not something I can do. Later on in the day, Zect meets the girls and asks, "So what will you all do?" Lita says, "I want to retire from being one of the forefront adventurers. Going back to the countryside and just dealing with orcs sounds much better." Maria says, "I want to go back to the village for now, just taking it easy and thinking about the future." Mel says, "Agreed. Jamuna village is calm and quiet." Zect says, "Then let's head back to the village and think about our future. After that, my privileges as hero are gone, so polygamy is no longer a possibility for me." Lita says, "Well, it's not us who have to choose." As Mel says, "Considering your former relationship, it's Maria, right?" Maria says, "I want us to be just friends, not a fiancé, same as everyone." As Zect says, "I see. We'll be treated as S-rank adventurers. Once we've rested, we'll be free to explore the infinite possibilities awaiting us. Okay, let's go to Jamuna village." Suddenly, a soldier comes running and says, "S-rank adventurer, Lord Zect, the town is currently under attack by the demons. You've been given an urgent quest to help." Zect asks, "Demons? How many enemies?" The soldier says, "Just one, a humanoid." Zect thinks, "A rank or higher adventurers receive penalties if they don't accept emergency quests." Lita says, "Zect, if it's just one, we can easily win." Maria says, "It's perfect to start our new life." So Zect says, "You're right, let's go." As they arrive, they see the humanoid. Mel says, "That's our target." Zect says, "Victory goes to whoever strikes first. Let's do this." As they were attacking the humanoid Maimon, it suddenly captures Zect and says, "Are you the brave Zect?" As Zect says, "I am." Maimon says, "Maimon of the 4 heavenly kings." As Zect strikes, falling onto the ground, Maimon says, "Do you think you can cut me with that sword?" He flings Zect far away, saying, "Isn't there anyone stronger?" Zect says, "I am humanity's strongest, the brave." Zect thinks, "Humanity's strongest, huh? That position might be Ceres's now, but I can't burden him anymore." Just then, a little boy comes over and strikes with a stick, saying, "How dare you do that to Mom and Dad? You're going to be defeated by the hero Ceres." As Zect scolds the boy, saying, "Fool." Maimon says, "Hero, Ceres?" Recalling, Maimon says, "Right. The hero party had 5 members. In that case, bring them here. I'll hold their execution for 7 days." As Zect falls to the ground, he says, "Ceres, we couldn't do it. Please don't come." As the transmission completes, Marianne says, "Sir Ceres." But Ceres says, "Sorry, Princess Marianne. We'll talk about our marriage another day." As Marianne asks, "Will you head there?" Meanwhile, Ceres thinks, "Strong-arm Maimon, one of the 4 heavenly kings, and he even surpasses the demon king in terms of strength. I've heard that he's the strongest among the entire king's army. Most likely, he's weaker than the Black Dragon, but I'm not sure I can beat him with my current strength. And if I'm pushed to my limits, I don't know what'll happen to my body that has dragon powers." Regardless, Ceres says to Marianne, "I want to save my childhood friends." Marianne says, "Promise me that you'll come back." As Ceres leaves, he recalls in his mind, "I asked the Holy Church of Gandil and the Galvan Empire to send a squad of healers and knights to keep civilians out. Luckily, I had been granted the title of hero, so the countries were cooperative. I asked the kingdom of Zamar to hold off Shizuko and the girls. Given how they are, I know they'll definitely go after me, but Mammon is too dangerous." Shizuko says, "Ceres, we received a special quest from the king." Misaki says, "He says men aren't allowed to participate. Maybe it's being Marianne's bodyguard?" Sayo says, "So, we'll be separated for a bit." As Ceres leaves, he says to himself, "This might be the end of the road for me. Sorry everyone, if I come back alive, I'll apologize to death." Ceres meets a dragon named Gianta and says, "Gianta, can you fly to the fortress city of Dominique?" Along the way, he thinks, "I married Shizuko and the girls, and became the stepfather of Zect and the others. It might have taken me a little to realize this, but as a former father, I watched over them as if they were my children. They were impudent and reckless. Sure, but they're still just kids. Guys, wait for me." Meanwhile, as the girls were talking with Marianne, Shizuko asks, "Do you know something, Marianne?" Marianne fumbles as she says, "No." Then she says, "I can't protect the person I care the most for. Father asked me to stop you all, but I don't want to live in regret." As Marianne tells about the hero party, she says, "Apparently they'll be executed in 7 days." Shizuko says, "They set out on a journey to slay the Demon King, so something like this happening was a possibility. However, as their mothers, we can't abandon them. Besides, we can't let Ceres throw himself into danger. Don't worry, Marianne. We'll bring Ceres and those kids back safe and sound." Haruka says, "But it's too far to make it in time by carriage. What do we do?" Sayo says, "There was a report of a flying dragon heading in Dominique's direction. That was probably Ceres." Misaki says, "What a problem. We can't tame a flying dragon." Sayo says, "And even if I were to fly there, I'll run out of mana on the way." Marianne says, "In that case, please take the Royal Griffin. I'll arrange everything without telling Father." Seeing Ceres landing, Zect scolds, saying, "Ceres? You dumb fool. Why did you come? After all the awful things we did to you." Ceres says, "Zect, there are a lot of things I need to tell you. Listen, I married Shizuko, and not just her. Big Sis, Sayo, and Misaki too. They're all my wives now, Zek says, shocked. What the heck are you talking about? Maria asks. You married our mothers? Lita says. Are you kidding us? Mel asks. Wait, did we get NTR'd? Ceres says, apologizing. I bought Shizuko when she was being sold as a slave. The other three, we just talked normally, and then they divorced their husbands. Zek yells, what in the world did you do? Maria says, they're twice your age, this is unbelievable. Ceres says, and I was prepared to take on a responsibility as well. As he wields his sword, Ceres says, to be you all's dad. And there's no father in the world that would abandon his kids. I'm not running away, so shut up and watch. Maimon says, are you done saying your goodbyes? Then come. As Ceres strikes, he thinks, my sword slice and spell were just feints. He's not an opponent I can defeat in a fair fight. So I'll strike the source of the demon's power, his horn. That's why I borrowed a hammer that forged the holy sword from the Pope on the way here. It's over. As his strike fails, Ceres says, the hammer used to forge the holy sword, huh? Ceres says, but that won't work. As Maimon severs Ceres' arm, Zekt and the girls shout, Ceres! No! As Ceres fell to the ground holding his arm, Zekt calls out, that's enough, just run. Maria says, we'll be fine. Maimon says, was that all? How boring. I had high hopes, but you turned out to be a disappointment. Seeing Ceres, Shizuko says, Sayo, Misaki, bye just a little time. Haruka, get the kids. As the ladies say in unison, got it. Shizuko goes and saves Ceres. Meanwhile, as Haruka saves the kids, Mel comes over saying, Mom, but Haruka says, the handcuffs key is over there, so free yourselves. We'll talk after. Maria says, must be because we kicked Ceres out. Lita says, I've never seen Mom so angry before. As Shizuko uses her hair ribbon and ties it on Ceres' arm to stop the bleeding, she begins to use her magic to heal him as Ceres says, Shizuko, Shizuko says, you didn't want to throw us into a dangerous situation, right? We know that, you big dummy. Meanwhile, as Haruka and the ladies were attacking, Maimon says, throwing more small fries at me won't change a thing. That won't work. That's not going to work. As the ladies fall to the ground, Misaki says, so this is the Demon King's army's physically strongest. Meanwhile, Ceres lifts the transmission ball and transmits a signal to the kingdom of Zamar. Seeing this transmission, Marianne says, once again, those precious to me are going to... Meanwhile, Maman says, so you got up again. Guess I'll revise my opinion of you. We can fight one-on-one, but only after I get rid of all the nuisances. As he was about to go over to the ladies, Ceres calls out, stop it, as he thinks, I finally got his happiness. I'm not going to lose it now. Ceres calls out, stop it, as Ceres goes over and bites Maimon, surprising the ladies. Maimon says, what are you doing? Seeing him transform, Maimon says, huh? Impossible. What is up with you? Meanwhile, the ladies see Ceres as Shizuko says, shocked, Ceres, your arm? Ceres sees his severed arm has changed into a dragon's arm. Ceres says, feeling it, strength is surging within me, and I'm realizing my body doesn't hurt at all. Seeing his dragon arm, Maimon gets angry as he attacks, saying, what in the world is happening here? Just then, Ceres attacks with his claw as Maimon says, who are you? Ceres says, just a regular human. Maimon says, the hell? Do you mean you're a regular human? You brat? As Ceres says, don't get so conceited just because you're a demon. As Ceres blows fire at Maimon, Maimon says, fine then. As he breaks his horns, I'm going to fight you seriously. I can only use this technique once every few decades, but it will make me several times stronger than normal, Ceres says. Come, I'll take you on. He summons dragon wings. As Ceres and Maimon were attacking each other, Shizuko says, that way of fighting, it's completely different from the usual Ceres. Haruka says, but his strength is extraordinary. He can turn things around now. As Maimon and Ceres were fighting, Maimon says, nicely done, hero Ceres. That's how fights should be. But my body is harder than mithril. I won't break. There's no one that can defeat me. Ceres thinks, quite tough indeed. Also, I'm getting way too hot. This is getting tiresome. As Ceres attacks, Maimon says, you fool! What do you think you're doing? Seeing Ceres, Haruka asks, overwhelming strength beyond what any human could muster, should we chase them? Misaki says, no, it's frustrating to admit, but we'll only get in his way. Shizuko says, it's okay. He'll defeat Maimon and come back in his usual form. I mean, his dragon form isn't half bad. As Zekt calls, Mom, it's been a while. There's so much I want to tell you. Everyone is seriously injured. Maria is in so much pain that she can't use healing magic, so thanks for saving us. Could you heal? As Shizuko punches Zekt, Misaki asks, Maria, a potion. But that won't be nearly enough. You won't die, so that's plenty, right? Haruka says, a healer squad will be coming later. Why don't you get them to heal you? Sayo says, then, once Ceres is back, we'll have a family meeting. Meanwhile, Sayo says, there might be some survivors left in the city. We should be doing what we can in the meantime. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Gandil, on seeing the transmission, the people say, "What's going on? Where did he go after grabbing Mammon?" Another person says, "More importantly, what's with the arm and wings he grew?" A nobleman says, "He's not a human anymore." Pope Romerus says, scolding, "Be quiet. Lord Ceres is a hero." Meanwhile, former Saint Cecilia says, "So that person is Lord Ceres. How wonderful. He's something worthy of serving for my entire life." Pope Romerus asks, "Why did you start blushing after seeing him in that form?" Cecilia says, "He requested a healer squad, right? Lord Ceres will definitely win with his divine powers, so we'll part right away." Over at Galvan Empire, the king says, "You said the conditions for marrying you were someone stronger than yourself. How about Lord Ceres?" Former Sword Saint Frey says, "I, Frey, may have lost against the Demon King, but I'm still quite powerful, you know?" The king says, "He's far stronger than you. He's already got 4 infamous wives, though. If he was fine with them, he should be fine with a 28-year-old like you." Frey gets shocked on finding out as the king says, 2 of those are Misaki, the Berserk Black Knight, and Haruka, the Smiling Reaper Demon. Frey says, shocked, "My teachers? Ceres, just who in the world is he?" Back with Maimon, Maimon says, "So you want to settle this in a volcano where there's no one to get in our way? Very well, let us enjoy killing one another." As Ceres lifts Maimon up in the air, Maimon says, "Hey, let me down already." As Ceres says, "The temperature of magma is over 1,000 degrees. Think you can handle it?" Maimon says, "Interesting. A battle of endurance, but can your human body handle it?" Ceres thinks, "This body is now a dragon. I can probably endure, but I've got Shizuko's ribbon on me." Ceres leaves Maimon saying, "It'd be a problem if my clothes melted, so go by yourself." As Ceres releases, Maimon says, "Ceres, come and fight me. We're still not done." Ceres thinks, "Fighting you was so much fun." As Maimon falls, Ceres says, "So even the 4 heavenly kings can't withstand that." As Ceres looks at his hand, "It's all over now. But the current me is no longer human. My powers now probably rival those of royal dragons. Most likely because of the Black Dragon's curse. Dragonification." As Ceres transforms into a dragon, he says, "Yellow? I thought I'd be black, but now I understand my power. I can't beat the Black Dragon, but I can crush Mammon in an instant. If Maimon really was stronger than the Demon King, then I can storm the Demon King's castle and slaughter everyone, which means that the people who rule this world are probably the Dragon Kings. But why does no one know of their existence? The Hades Dragon Bower. The Dragon Kings. There's no one but them who can defeat me at this point." Then Ceres says, "Humanification," and transforms into a human. Even his severed arm transforms into a normal arm. Ceres says, "My arm regenerated in human form. However, even in this state, I'm a dragon, not a human. Will everyone accept me, even though I'm a monster?" Ceres sees he's got a transmission from Marianne, who says, "Lord Ceres, I got worried when you disappeared from the communication crystal, so I called you directly." Ceres says, "I defeated Maimon. My body is unhurt too." Marianne says, "Oh, thank goodness." Ceres thinks, "I should tell her that I'm no longer human. Even if I were to be with women, I don't think I'd be able to have children with them." Ceres says to Marianne, "I'll be returning to the royal capital right away." Again, Ceres thinks, "If I become the first princess's consort, there will be issues with a successor." Meanwhile, Cecilia thinks, "I once challenged the Demon King to battle and got utterly defeated. The hero and sorcerer that fought alongside us were killed instantly. The remaining Sword Saint Frey and I would die soon as well. Just as I prepared myself for it, my teacher Shizuko and the teary-eyed Princess Sayo came to our rescue. Because they did something to the Demon King, we managed to return. My teachers are now his wives. Most likely, that beautiful boy, Ceres, possesses the powers of a dragon. Cute, so very cute. My heart is thrilled. Just by looking at him, my despair turns into hope. I have fallen in love. I want to fight by your side, true brave. Seriously, I can't hold myself anymore."